So welcome everyone. I have the pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker, Sarah Hutton. Sarah is the interim dean of libraries at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She administers the W.E.B. Du Bois and Science and Engineering libraries on their Amherst campus, as well as the Wadsworth Library on their Mount Ida campus in Newton, Massachusetts. Sarah received her BS degree in counseling with dual minors in psychology and art from this university. Her master's degree is in library and information. Her master's degree in library and information studies is from the University of Rhode Island, and she's also a PhD candidate in educational policy and leadership in the College of Education at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where her doctoral research focuses on motivational theory and open pedagogical course models. She has a really interesting range of expertise that shows up in her publications and talks on topics extending from open education to management to learning, student learning spaces, and to collaborative relationship management, collaborative relationship development in higher education. She is a member of the Creative Commons Global Network and a collaborator with the Open Education Global and the Open Education for a Better World projects, which I didn't know about that last one. It looks really interesting project using open education and achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. She brings years of experience from positions held at the University of Bridgeport, at Rice University, and at Boston University. She is a member of Beta Phi Mu, which is the International Library and Information Studies Honor Society. And she is a global OER graduate network scholar. Sarah, it's a pleasure to have you presenting to us today on space and place to inspire, facilitating student communities and success with physical and digital learning spaces. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thanks everybody for taking the time to have this conversation with me today. We're going to be talking about space and place, specifically in libraries. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see my slides. Can everybody see that okay? Can I get a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Can I get a something? All right. So we're going to be taking a look at spaces specifically in libraries, looking at some of the trends in space development, but most importantly, we're going to be talking about how to get to know your user community, your students, your faculty, your staff, and your community members, where we all are in this shared moment of global turmoil really shifts what we need, what everybody needs as learners and as community members, and what it takes to spark creative thought in space and place is very different now than what it has been. So the spark of inspiration looks different for everyone, and everyone has their own story. In this video excerpt that I'm going to share for a brief group watch, this is from the 2022 Association of Research Libraries Film Festival winner, Treasures Storing Up This Space. This is written and performed by Alondra Bobadilla, Boston's first youth poet laureate. Alondra shares her memories of inspiration from her time in the Hyde Park and Copley libraries.
I've never loved a library more than the one at the Lee School, where I discovered self and passion and magic and beauty, and books extended their hands to me more than other humans. And I remember the Hyde Park Library. My mama took me there, and I sat in an aisle and picked out all the books I could be inspired by. And I fell in love with the smells, shells of power on every shelf, where stories of people who looked and protested and created like me were everywhere. The only thing separating me from 1940s America, 1960s Beijing was a name or a genre. The world was literally at my fingertips. And I remember the first time I went to the Copley Library, the garden, a metaphor for the seeds of thought planted in all which flourishes here. The young people in the teen central space, a sanctuary, have no limitations besides their own will as they yield here to curiosity and plausibility, There are walls in the building, but no longer in their minds as they print, read, game, and study and wonder, just wonder all the ways and reasons and hows. And I am compelled to reimagine our world with them. Can you gatekeep knowledge? If fake news frightens you, I invite you to experience the wonder of past and modern preservation, an idea that is held steadfast through generations, a pillar of knowledge, all of its resources, an invitation to explore, to be curious, to express, to question, to answer, to become. And all of this in freedom. From a position of freedom, we search the shelves, the archives, we travel to worlds beyond what our pockets can afford and our understanding can fathom.
So Alondra tells her story, talking about space and place where she was surrounded by people reading, printing, gaming, and studying, a place where she felt compelled to reimagine and was inspired to explore new thought in the library. Everyone has a story, including me. Growing up in rural America on a farm, pre-internet, and internet access is still incredibly spotty in this area, reading was a means of escape, of learning, of transcending borders. As my family split apart over the course of my childhood, the small local library became a sanctuary too. I would sneak peeks into the adults' reading room, look at the giant wingback chairs and soak in the peace of the space and just be away from the din of the noise of arguing in my own home, the cacophony of the farm animal voices, and the sound of my own loneliness. Being there gave me hope and it made me feel safe. Now I'm going to have you each take a moment to consider your own story, thinking about space, place, and inspiration. This can be in the library, in your library, or anywhere. I would like for each of you to think about a time when you felt inspired to be creative, to learn, or explore. Think about the space, the place, if there were people around you, how you felt. Take some time to review these questions and record your answers. Use pen, crayon, whatever is available, paper, digital, whatever works best for you. I'm going to give you about a minute to write down your thoughts. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment. And I'm going to ask first if there's anybody who would like to share their own story, share what they've jotted down. We have time for one or two. If you would like to share, I believe that you should be able to use the raise hand function. Okay. Thank you, Maha. So we're going to have Maha share in chat. Yeah. Oh, cool. Kikai. Very cool. Ah, nice. Very nice. Nice. Remembering about times as a teen in the public library with your bestie. There are spaces that that are special and places that are special, and also, the people. It doesn't necessarily matter, what the built space is. Sometimes it's the group of people. Sometimes it's what you're researching or thinking about. And actually, if I could have, there's a poll that can be brought up. Alex, if you'd like to share that. That in thinking about the space and the place in which you felt inspired, what I would like to ask you, you all to answer is, think about, out of the following, what do you feel was the most important about that space and place where you felt inspired? Was it the built surroundings, the people, the ambiance, what you were doing, what you were working on, or how did you feel during that? So I'm gonna give you a moment just to respond to those questions, and we'll kind of see how, where things fall. Yeah, even we can see here, even as it is shifting. Oh, nice. Marked by passion and commitment. I love that, Catherine. Yeah. Yeah, we all have our different moments and our different stories when we feel inspired, when we experience wonder. About half of the folks have responded here, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So you can see here that different things are important to different people. Based on your own experience and what you're bringing into a space and a place, there could be several different factors that help you feel inspired. Again, the surprising creativity sparked by conversations, the nostalgia of meeting with friends. Everybody carries that with them into every space. Our community members, our students, our library patrons, they carry that with them into the space, and we don't necessarily know. Oh, beach novel. Nice. So you can see just from this group of people, like there are differences across the board. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this and get back to my slides. And going from that, showing just like a slice of what that difference is and what the meanings and meaning making is for each one of us individually. I am now going to be talking a bit about that holistic assessment of your community being necessary in order to understand what the current and the future needs are. In thinking about, the differences between our own opinions, we really need to get to know our students, our faculty, our staff, and what they're bringing into our spaces and our places. Holistic assessment is necessary. The assessment leads to identifying user needs, the potential programs, the services and spaces that meet those needs. And then as we find out what these identified needs and goals are to address them, we realize they don't necessarily reside just within our academic library spaces. There are stakeholders across our campuses in the communities that, like us, are seeking to support the campus and our students, and are also looking to share resources. So this is where new and fruitful collaborations can occur. So there's the assessment, the program development, and the new collaborations that can occur. During my talk, I'm going to be walking through 3 case examples of spaces and places in our libraries where we foster learning communities, sharing the 3 component parts that I just discussed for each: the assessment process, programs and services, and the new partnerships or alliances that were formed as a result of that process as we made our way through that space planning journey. Many of the methods and projects shared will be scalable and adaptable across institution types. I invite you to submit questions. I don't know if there's the Q&A feature, or you could just pop them into chat. Alex or Jeff, feel free to give a shout out if somebody wants me to pause and mention something. Otherwise, we will have time at the end to discuss anything that I share, and unpack it a bit further. And then I'll be doing a deeper dive into some of these elements in the following workshop. So before diving into that first case study of the Learning Commons, it's important to note that starting out with finding out what your users need and what that story is that they're bringing in, where they're coming from, and their expectations, takes getting involved in a regular assessment practice, which first starts with a shared vision. When assessing the needs of your library users, starting with a strong vision as a guiding principle really helps to have everybody moving toward the same goal. You could look at the strategic plan for the university or the academic division your library is in. This example that I'm sharing here, and there's the link. I don't expect everybody to read through all of this right now. This is the vision that I set for the UMass Amherst libraries at the start of my appointment as interim dean. We are open. As we move forward in our planning and assessment practices, we frequently come back to this statement to re-anchor ourselves in our vision. What does it look like to have open collections, communication spaces, minds, and what does that mean for our users? What makes them feel welcome and supported in an open space, and what does open mean to them? We start out by looking at our main accrediting body, the New England Commission of Higher Education, NECHI, and it's different for every institution by region geographically, the American Association of Colleges and Universities, and then how these guiding principles filter into the UMass Amherst campus strategic planning, recommendations for flexible learning and high flex learning, and then how that is all distilled into the strategic plan for our libraries. And looking at these guiding principles and recommendations, in the case of our Learning Commons space in the Du Bois Library, the framing provided by the guidance from our accrediting bodies and system-wide strategic plans was one to create this academic support hub for undergraduate students, which focuses on shifting pedagogical models to more hands-on problem-based learning. Libraries are academic spaces and need to reflect what is happening in the classroom, providing that support for students outside of class time. This has become particularly important with the shift over the last decade plus to classroom models. More project and group work is being done, and all of this is outside of the formal classroom. So the three major categories where technology and space support is needed in libraries are for collaborative and group work, experiential and problem-based learning, and ensuring that there are structured and unstructured informal spaces that are in alignment with universal design learning principles, always in mind. So let's look at what happens when these groups in team-based learning classrooms, and we have a TBL classroom model on our own campus. What needs to happen when students are outside the classroom? We developed spaces in our library to reflect what the students would be needing to do that group work, having the technology and the spaces and support to in structured spaces in group study rooms that can be reserved in our Learning Commons. We built several bookable study rooms, and we have multiple group study spaces outfitted with task seating, which has ample electrical and networking to support multiple devices for each student as well. These more informal open spaces have the flexibility to allow for group work or individual study, students working alone together. So academic library spaces, the services and the technologies are constantly being reinvented to keep up with very rapidly changing intellectual landscape, as you know. And our Learning Commons, is well over 10 years old. I mean, well over, I want to say like 15 years old now. And we had experienced growth in minor configuration over time. And it was recognized that we needed to engage in a transformative process, and that was really going to take a full assessment plan. So prior to this transformation, we needed to answer these essential questions. Are students academically successful in the current Learning Commons? And how can we ensure that any changes that we make to that space guarantee the continuation of the learning process? I'm going to check really quick to see in chat of the question. There we go. Oh, thank you. So these are a few types of the data that we collect on a regular basis to help create that full picture of usage of our space, services, and equipment. on a regular basis. We use Tableau. An open source alternative is Metabase, and I'm always pushing for moving to open source alternatives. What we do, you know, it's a state campus and we have central IT. Sorry, I advanced. I get a little excited when I talk about open software, so I advanced too quickly. We cross-tabulate different types of usage, providing infographics that might help us to tell that story of how students are using our space. We provide all this data and much of our related assessment efforts publicly on the library's website. One of our other ongoing quantitative assessment methods is tracking the interactions we have with our users at service points. We use Tableau again, and Metabase is an alternative, to visualize a lot of our assessment data. Here are some visualizations of hourly, monthly, and day of week statistics. And also you can scale and see who's answering the questions and what types of questions they are. And that helps us to shape and make recommendations on our services. Another form of quantitative data collection that we had collected, and this was pre-pandemic, and I can talk in the Q&A about how this shifted over the course of intermittent closings over the past couple of years. So headcount data is really useful for determining traffic patterns in a space and for determining whether an area is popular, unpopular, growing or shrinking in usage, and what percentage of the time is being used at capacity. And this literally is just walking around and counting how many people are using different types of identified and built spaces in your library. So then looking beyond that regular quantitative, we were interested in really finding out, like, are students learning in the space? What are they doing in the space? And that was, you know, looking to more of a qualitative investigation. So we followed in the footsteps of the University of Rochester project that Nancy Freed Foster, and this, you know, this is quite some time ago at this point, and Susan Gibbons collaborated on in studying student behavior. So we decided that we needed to do our own studies to understand our own space and students in connection to how we could update that space to meet the needs of our current and future students in the Learning Commons. We realized we would need to scale down the project massively. And again, I want to reiterate, any of these methods are scalable up or down. And for us, a lot of the projects that really caught our attention, we didn't have the staff or the financial resources to be able to scale up for multi-institution studies. So we scaled down, and we partnered specifically with our anthropology department, teaming up with Krista Harper, whose focus was on ethnographic research methods, and having her undergraduate and graduate students in structured classes do participatory research with the idea that the UMass Learning Commons and learning spaces were the focus of the study. And again, I'll be sharing the slides after. I know this is a lot of content, but this is in that interest in going into the deeper dive beyond the quantitative data analysis and talking with our students about how they were using space and resources. We looked at that success of the larger ethnographic studies like the Aerial Project with Andrew Asher, and again, looked at scaling down. This is the overall mapping of the types of, you know, observation and interviews and, you know, document analyses that we did as a part of this large assessment project. I'll be doing a deeper dive on this during the workshop session. I'm just going to focus on a few samples from this overarching process during this talk. So a relatively quick and easy method for gathering assessment, gathering feedback from your students and how they're using a space. Whiteboards can be useful as an informal means of getting student feedback. They can be helpful, but may not always get to the feedback you would like. There are issues, you know, with any of our library spaces, markers go missing, boards are being erased and can be repurposed for work, which is good, but then you lose data. Another method we used was a comment box. If you're interested in how students are using your space and you just want them to comment on it while they're physically in it, put in a comment box and then take a look at what they report back. So this overarching study of the Learning Commons, we had 4 main findings, 4 thematic categories, including students like having their autonomy and personal space, but appreciate the energy of being alone together to study. Another theme was wayfinding communication. With all of the services, spaces, and resources consolidated into one centralized support hub, students found that figuring out how to navigate the wealth of support was confusing, and better wayfinding is definitely needed. And another theme was many of our spaces were self-governed by students, and it turns out that made them feel uncomfortable. We explored implementing a group study room reservation system as a result of our findings, which we did shortly before the pandemic started, and that really helped to manage our spaces for contact tracing as we moved into intermittent shutdowns. And then finally, another area for continuing the research was discovered. Students not identifying as the white majority, which is the majority population at UMass Amherst, let us know that many of the spaces in our libraries and on campus were those which they would identify as white spaces, which led to a sense of lack of belonging and safety. This is a theme I'm going to explore in greater depth during the following workshop session. And also during that workshop, I will be covering how we approach implementing changes to our spaces as a result of this ethnographic research project overall. So the second case study I'm going to share is our digital media lab, which grew out of ongoing research on supporting our student learning needs on campus as a part of the Learning Commons and growth needed in the libraries overall to align with shifting trends in student learning. So many of the assignments in the collaborative classroom environments that reviewed earlier provide students the opportunity to develop creative forms of scholarship, including media production, open publishing, and virtual modeling. Libraries need to be prepared to support this work by providing multimedia equipment for checkout, software and spaces for production, virtual reality and immersive technologies, and the ability to create physical prototypes of designed objects using 3D printers. Our library's digital media lab supports the research journey from start to finish and offers our students resources such as, just a handful featured here of the sound recording booths, green screen rooms for video, 3D modeling software and printers, and most importantly, the support to explore the development of new technologies and products to address real world problems, such as this air pollution monitoring device developed by researcher Filomeno Quiros, as pictured in the lower right. A student can come to one place, the library, to formulate their research inquiry, receive support in conducting market research to identify need for a potential solution to a problem, connect with other researchers in those networks, design a product and prototype it, and then learn about their own rights as a scholar and patent potentialities from our library research experts, all in one place, all open. So to develop a programming plan for the DML, and that's what I'm focusing on with this case study is really the programming component. We have taken a look not at what the space itself can provide, but what our campus community needs for digital scholarship services and support overall, and where the digital media lab fits into that equation. There are multiple campus stakeholders invested in supporting digital scholarship and media production for our campus populations. Really, we're taking a look at what makes the libraries unique and how can we grow in this area, alongside partners such as Special Collections, University Archives, Center for Teaching and Learning, the Digital Humanities Institute, and more. So again, grounding our approach in open and thinking about how the libraries fit into the digital scholarship campus architecture, a unique direction to take is by offering support for users to build new ways of exploring history and contemporary thought using our digital collections. Our library system has the entirety of the William Eckhart Du Bois papers digitized. Taking them out of physical form and opening them up for those to use, what might be possible in spaces like the DML. It's really exciting to think about and to experiment with. And as I mentioned, we have this massive collection of digital papers. And so what you see here on the left-hand image is a site of the Du Bois boyhood home in Great Barrington, a plot now filled with trees, and the house itself no longer exists. In collaboration with the libraries and the Du Bois Center, graduate students in history and anthropology were able to recreate the home using rich descriptions provided by Du Bois in those digitized papers, text describing his experience in the house as a boy. And in conjunction with a handful of digital images, a house was created in virtual reality using Unity, where one can not only walk through the space, but also interact with scanned objects from the archaeological home site in Great Barrington. and listen to digital oral histories from our collections, all in one immersive experience. And this is something researched and developed by students leveraging, again, our open collections. So looking at direct curriculum and course tie-ins, these courses are all examples from the IMLS grant research on makerspaces and libraries and maker literacies. Oops, wait a second. I don't know. Oh, sorry, my slides got a little out of order. There we go. Having research support plus digital and physical fabrication support all within the library has been critical for this ongoing research in competencies in making maker spaces in undergraduate education. All of these courses listed here, exemplifying research from multiple libraries across the US, provide a diverse spread of topics and speak to the heart of why spaces, technologies, and support for creative digital pedagogy belong in the library. Access isn't restricted only to students who pay lab fees for specialized programs, which are historically more of a fit for high-end technologies. The humanities, social, and physical sciences all have equal footing in this model. The Research, Art, and Science Exhibition, or RACE, is another program offered by the Digital Media Lab where undergraduates and graduate students, especially those underrepresented student populations, are encouraged to create an artistic representation of their research work that can be produced as a picture to be mounted and displayed in the Digital Media Lab, and then produced as a virtual reality exhibition. This exhibit program is another example of getting students engaged with research and showcasing their work. It provides an opportunity to present concepts to an audience and practice public speaking skills, and it is absolutely scalable. Students can present their research simply on paper or in person or online in a digital environment, whatever is available, appropriate, and meets the current need. Our Digital Media Lab has successfully provided support and programming in our built spaces for over 5 years, and we were looking at scaling up in preparation for multimodal. This was right before the pandemic. Little did we know what was coming. This expansion, which occurred over the last 2 years amidst intermittent shutdown, moved the Digital Media Lab down adjacent to our Learning Commons and provided, expanded and built spaces for virtual reality, multimedia production, and streamed lectures. And we multi-purposed our 3D printing area and where those 3D printers are housed and the prototyping technologies with a workshop space, so we could have more flexibility in the area and be able to multi-purpose like different spaces for different uses. And honestly, it's incredible to me to take that moment that this all happened over the pandemic. So much has. And I know I'm going to go over a little bit on time, but this last case study is the most important. So this goes into the last case study. How much has changed over the course of the pandemic and where we're at now. This case study is on student wellness programming with a focus on partnerships that we have developed and strengthened over the last few years, growing our outreach series and meeting students where they are and with what they really need at this point in time. So over the last several years, we have been increasing our collaborations with our student affairs and campus life groups in response to growing research. For me, this 2012 book, edited by Lisa Jeanette Hinchcliffe and Melissa Wong, was really the catalyst to start looking at providing holistic support for students in libraries through partnerships in student affairs and across the campus. I worked with my library administration at the time, to create a new position dedicated solely to student success and outreach programming to lead our engagement efforts with our population of over 23,000 students. And our outreach efforts have been transformed by partnerships with Residential Life, Student Athletics, our Multicultural Student Success Center, Student Governments Association, the list goes on. And our outreach programming has spanned over time, from tabling events in the campus center to teaching in classroom spaces, having conversations and flyering in student dorms, and facilitating restorative play activities during midterms and finals. Now let's take a look at the moment that we're in. Our students are really suffering currently. Psychologically speaking, the teen and early adulthood years are fraught with questioning and uncertainty. And over the last few years, the scaffolding for the support for our students has dropped out from underneath them. Suicide rates on our own campus have increased significantly over the past couple of years, along with our peer institutions in the US, one of which is listed in this piece by USA Today from, I think, April or March this year. Worcester Polytech, I have a lot of colleagues there. And yeah, all of our campuses are suffering right now. And this is the moment where we are. So a little bit about the JED Foundation. Some folks may be aware of this. In 2000, the JED Foundation was started by the parents of a teenager, Jed, as you might suspect, who they lost, unfortunately, to suicide in 1998. This foundation aims to look at providing a uniform prevention model at schools and on college campuses. Communities struggle to overcome the shame and secrecy that prevents an honest and open discussion of mental health. So today, JED is the leading organization in the US dedicated to young adult mental health, and UMass Amherst has partnered with the foundation and has become a member. And on a quarterly basis, stakeholders from across the campus meet to discuss the support of student mental health, and the libraries are there. Recognizing that the library is a third space used as a sociocultural term to designate communal space as distinct from the home, the first space, and work, the second space. Over the last 2 years, we have increased our partnerships with counseling and psychological services to offer an additional type of space, places where students could have private virtual consultations with mental health professionals. As the campus rallies around our students in support of mental health, the library continues to offer safety and spaces that are open to whatever our students need in the moment. So far as our outreach programming was concerned, it was clear students were really missing that in-person connection. So we took it outside. Partnering again with Student Affairs and Campus Life, we provided opportunities for students to commune safely, support each other through very basic restorative activities, like tie-dyeing t-shirts, as a part of Wellbeing Wednesdays, a new program that was created over the course of the pandemic. And in the fall of 2020, we moved all library outreach programming that we could online and the rest outside to maintain health and safety protocols. Student participation in these programs was so high and increasing. Oh, raised hand. Yes. Jeff.
Sorry, I'm just trying to touch it. You've got about 5 minutes to the scheduled end. We can run over a little bit if you need to. We've got a little bit of a buffer, but if you want to leave time for Q&A.
Sure. No, sorry. No, I know it's I timed this out and I end up running over. I'm just wrapping up with the last. So this assessment that we conducted of our library's outreach series this spring showed that students were really connecting with their programming and experiencing increased feelings of well-being, connections with one another. And for those who may be wondering about, well, you know, that's wonderful and everything, but then what about the academic and intellectual support of the students who participate in the programs? Over 90% of them said that by participating in our outreach series, would make them more likely to return for academic support. So in these shared moments where we are recognizing the painful moment that a lot of our campuses are in, I want to, bring it back to thinking about the user story and our own origins, and playful engagement, and providing space for play and joy in our shared spaces. There's been a lot of research conducted about how playful engagement helps with intellectual discourse, and now it can help with feeling welcomed and whole in spaces, and that should absolutely be considered in libraries. So there we go. Thank you. Questions welcomed. Sorry, I went over a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and stop share.
Thanks, Sarah. That was great. That was wonderful. There were a few things that came up in the chat. They weren't phrased as questions, but I'll bring Sarah's attention back to those in a minute. So anyone want to ask questions directly? Just go ahead and raise your hand or speak up with your mic. Or if you prefer, you can put the question in the chat and we'll monitor that as well.
Sarah, just to say this was wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing. And I love this idea of presenting the particular cases, because this makes it more doable for all of us to think of, kind of developments that we want to see in our spaces, in our libraries. Thank you very much. That was excellent. Thank you. So that's my comment.
Sure. Oh, thanks. And I saw too, I think, there was a comment in chat here thinking about spaces in undergraduate. Sorry, I couldn't see, as I was telling Jeff earlier, I have just the one little screen right now. So I'm looking at these, at all the feedback now. And you were mentioning actually the number of things about assessing how the library is contributing towards student success and telling our story. I'd love to hear more about that. If you're willing to share, Habib.
That was Noor. Go ahead. You've got your hand up. Go ahead, Noor.
So you see what?
Oh, Noor, sorry.
Yes. So we are a small undergrad liberal arts science, humanities, social arts science college, where we are offering BS programs. We have 1,000 students on campus. We do not have any dorm. Over the years, what I was feeling with my team, that whenever we try to tell story about library, we always talk about how it was utilized in terms of numbers, right? So this many times group discussion interviews, this many times, for example, students attending events and workshops. Somehow or the other, we were actually finding it difficult to how to link it to the student success, because for policymakers, administrators, donors, it's very important to know that how a space which requires a lot of budget and resources, being a non-profit institution, qualifies for more resources, and then how we can actually convince them that library is contributing to student success. So we are actually just started, working on this idea, and I'm actually trying to research and talk to other student success librarians. And one of the things which I have discovered is that you see career services department, they have success stories to show that this many students have got jobs, this many number of students have got study abroad opportunities. There is an Office of Academic Performance which is there to support students in their academic shortcomings. So they have story to tell that these many students were having a low GPA, now they have actually increased the GPA through the support. So I'm really curious to know that and explore that how library can actually come up with a story where students who are using the library for study, for research, for collaboration, can come up with a story where they can actually say that yes, in this way or that way, the library has contributed to my academic success. So I just started thinking about this and would love to know more and explore more about it. So I have a question as well, Sarah.
Because sure.
We are a very small campus. So what happens is that every department is doing so many things, offering a lot of programs. So health and wellness department is doing health and wellness stuff. There is a sports department. Then again, there are academic departments. And the department itself are organizing events. Careers department also organizing events. So what happens is that library also tries to come up with events, but somehow or the other, due to so many things happening at the campus, we do not get many students, right?
Right.
So to address that, I was thinking that now I should actually collaborate with different departments, right? Rather than, and that may be helpful for us to not only get many students, but actually coming up with a sort of a common calendar or schedule. So you talked about health and wellness. So did you at your campus, in the library, you have actually established this, what you call, which Wednesdays? It was
the Wellbeing Wednesdays.
Wellbeing Wednesdays. So does it happen at library or this is a part of the health and wellness?
It's a part of the bigger campus planning initiatives. And so our strategy, and like you were saying, Noor, it's really about connecting with stakeholders on campus and being a part of one larger program instead of everybody doing their own. And so Wellbeing Wednesdays, I want to say it was before the pandemic when when our campus hired someone to start taking a look at wellness programming and student health overall, and counseling services and student affairs. And as soon as that person got onto campus, I at the time was the head of student success and engagement as a department. And I was like, I'm going to meet with this person right away and start talking about it, about what they're doing, what they're interested in. And we'd been partnering with that group for a few years before the pandemic hit. And so when we started talking about, what do we do to support our students, it was a collective conversation across the campus. And so the person who oversees, she is an associate vice chancellor as a, part of the hierarchy. She called together stakeholders from across the campus, and I was included in that conversation. And then I invited in other folks in the libraries as necessary. And that really speaks to one of the issues that we've been talking about recently on my campus, is that we all want to help. We all want to create our own programs, and there's just so much stuff. There's just so much stuff. People don't know what emails to look at anymore. It's just like this flood of things, and they're also fatigued in participating in everything, that we took a minute to step back, last semester as a campus to be like, whoa, let's stop offering so much programming and do less frequent, bigger events where we're all working together, and less of these little pop-ups, because people just couldn't focus. And as a part of the workshop session, I do have a thought activity process where you can go through the process of thinking about how to identify and connect with campus stakeholders to have these conversations.